You never demanded anything from me. You simply saw through my silence, my chaos, and still called it love. You were the first person who looked at my broken pieces and didn't try to fix me. You just sat with me until I healed. I never had to explain myself to you. You heard the words I couldn't say, and that's what made you different. You never wanted my perfection. You wanted my truth, and that's why I'll never forget you. You didn't demand my attention. You earned my soul by understanding what I never said out loud. You never asked me to change. You just held space for me to become who I really was. You never measured my love by effort. You measured it by energy, and that's what made you rare. You didn't need my words to know what I was feeling. Your heart just mirrored mine effortlessly. You never forced me to stay. You gave me the freedom to leave, and that's why I stayed. You were the only one who noticed the sadness behind my laughter and the storm behind my calm. You didn't demand my attention. You deserved it by understanding my silence deeper than anyone's noise. You were the calm I never knew I needed, the peace I didn't know how to ask for. You never wanted control. You wanted connection, and that's what my soul recognized in you. You saw through every mask I wore, yet never made me feel exposed. Only understood. You never competed with my pain. You held it gently, as if it were sacred. You didn't demand love. You created an atmosphere where love could finally breathe. You were the first person who looked at my soul and didn't flinch. You never wanted explanations. You wanted presence, and somehow that healed everything. You never demanded promises. You just believed in my heart when I couldn't believe in myself. You saw beauty in my confusion and stayed when everyone else left. You never needed to be the loudest voice. You spoke through your patience. You didn't chase my attention. You earned my devotion with your understanding. You never wanted me perfect. You just wanted me honest, and that changed everything. You loved me without asking for proof, and that's what real love feels like. You were the quiet answer to every loud question my heart was asking. You didn't demand my time. You made me want to give it to you. You never tried to heal me. You reminded me I was never truly broken. You never demanded attention. Your energy simply drew my soul closer. You didn't love me for what I gave. You loved me for who I was when I had nothing left. You were the first person who made my soul feel safe enough to rest. You never tried to understand me with logic. You understood me with love. You didn't demand my heart. You whispered to it softly until it came to you willingly. You were the first to hold my silence without filling it with noise. You never asked for more. You appreciated what I could give, even when it was just honesty. You saw the storms in my eyes and still chose to dance in the rain with me. You never asked for forever. You were just present, and that made time stop. You didn't demand clarity. You walked with me through my confusion until I found myself. You were the first soul who spoke my unspoken language fluently. You didn't try to fix my darkness. You held my hand until I found my own light. You never asked why I was distant. You just sat closer in silence. You didn't demand to be loved. You gave love so effortlessly that it came back naturally. You never wanted me to explain my pain. You simply understood its rhythm. You didn't need grand gestures. You found meaning in the small moments I thought but no one noticed. You never demanded love. You became love. That's what made you unforgettable. You didn't just understand me, you felt me, even when I couldn't feel myself. You were the first to see my rawness and call it beautiful. You didn't demand perfection, you celebrated my process. You never asked for attention. You became the piece my attention naturally turned toward. You didn't want ownership. You wanted connection, and that made you divine. You were the calm ones in a world full of demands, the soul that truly saw me. You never demanded explanations. You trusted my energy, and that was enough. You didn't need promises. You lived in the truth of the present moment with me. You never pressured me to open up. You waited until I felt safe enough to do it. You didn't demand to be understood. You became understanding itself. You never demanded I love you. You simply were love, and my soul responded. You didn't need validation. Your presence alone was reassurance. You were the first to listen not to my words, but to the silence between them. You didn't demand I stay. You gave me reasons not to leave. You never forced a bond. You allowed one to grow naturally, and it bloomed like truth. You never demanded anything from me. You became my home in a world that never stopped asking for more. You never demanded to be seen. You simply showed up with a soul so radiant I couldn't look away. You didn't want to change me. You wanted to understand the story behind every scar I carried. You never needed my confession. You already felt the truth trembling behind my quiet eyes. You didn't demand explanations. Your presence made words unnecessary. You never wanted attention. You wanted connection, and that's what made you unforgettable. You didn't demand my secrets. You earned them by being gentle with my silence. You never asked me to be strong. You let me fall apart without judgment. You didn't want to own my heart. You wanted to walk beside it, freely and faithfully. You never demanded apologies. You understood the pain behind my distance. You didn't demand effort. You inspired it with your sincerity. You never needed validation. You became the reason I started believing in softness again. You didn't love me because you had to. You loved me because your soul recognized mine. You never asked for proof. You trusted the energy we shared. You didn't need me to be perfect. You just wanted me to be real. You never tried to fix my flaws. You held them like fragile truths that deserved tenderness. You didn't demand presence. You created peace that made me never want to leave. You never needed to raise your voice. Your calmness spoke louder than chaos ever could. You didn't demand control. You surrendered with trust. And that's where our love bloomed. You never asked me to explain the storm. You just held my hand through it. You didn't demand commitment. You became home. And that was enough reason to stay. You never asked for more. You appreciated the fragments I could give. You didn't chase me. You understood that love never needs to run. You never demanded forgiveness. You simply gave me the space to become better. You didn't try to predict my moods. You respected the mystery of my emotions. You never demanded I prove my love. You trusted the quiet ways it showed itself. You didn't demand I speak. You learned to read the language of my silence. You never asked me to forget my past. You just reminded me it didn't define my worth. You didn't need grand declarations. You saw my love in every small, unspoken act. You never asked for the best version of me. You stayed through every version that was still healing. You didn't demand I show up perfect. You were grateful that I showed up at all. You never wanted to own my heart. You wanted to honor it. You didn't demand I trust you. You became trustworthy without asking. You never asked for loyalty. You inspired it by being loyal first. You didn't want my attention. You wanted my peace, and that's what made you sacred. You never demanded love. You embodied love in ways words could never capture. You didn't chase validation. You lived in truth, and that's what made your presence healing. You never asked for anything. You gave everything by understanding me. You didn't need constant reminders. You remembered me even in silence. You never demanded time. You valued the moments we already had. You didn't try to impress me. You moved me by being authentically yourself. You never demanded my attention. You earned my admiration effortlessly. You didn't need my approval. You were already enough just by being kind. You never demanded gratitude. You gave without keeping score. You didn't ask me to stay. You became the peace I didn't want to lose. You never demanded I explain my tears. You wiped them without needing reasons. You didn't want to fix my world. You just wanted to walk through it with me. You never asked me to promise forever. You lived like love was already eternal. You didn't demand clarity. You found meaning even in my confusion. You never tried to complete me. You reminded me I was whole already. You didn't ask me to pretend. You welcomed the real, unfiltered version of me. You never demanded love. You gave it so freely that I couldn't help but return it. You didn't demand attention. You became the reason I started paying attention to life again. You never tried to change my mind. You changed my heart instead. You didn't demand I forget my pain. You helped me transform it into wisdom. You never demanded explanations. You loved me even when I couldn't explain myself. You didn't need to be understood. You were content just understanding me. You never demanded my energy. You matched it softly, patiently, beautifully. You didn't try to fix my silence. You listened to its rhythm until it trusted you. You never asked for reassurance. You gave it through every gentle action. You didn't demand anything. You became everything I never knew I needed.